Continuing where I left off. No rumor only of this great loss, but a sure messenger ran to Aeneid, telling how his men were now within ace of being destroyed, how he must lose no time stemming the rout. Near enemies he cut down with his blade, then made a swath before him in the ranks, driving on Turnus where the men stood, proud of his new kill. Pallas, Evander, all their history rose before Aeneas' eyes. The first feast he had come to as a stranger, the right hands joined in friendship. Now he took 4 sons of Somo, 4 more Ufens reared, took them alive to offer to the shades, in sacrifice wetting with captive blood the flames of Pallas' pyre. Magus, at whom he made a spear clasp, cleverly dodged ahead, so all quiver the shaft passed over him. Embracing the spearman's knees his pled, I pray you by your father's ghost, and by your hope, Iolaus, rising power, preserve a life here for a father and a son. I have a great house, hidden deep within are bars of enchased silver, weights of gold, both finished and unfinished. Victory, for Trojans cannot hinge on this one case. This one life cannot weigh so much. Aeneas retorted in this way, those bars of gold and silver that you tell of, spare for your sons. Turnus has already done away with all such war trade. Pallas being lost, my father Anchises' ghost feels as I say, and so does Iolaus. And with this he took the man's helm in his left hand, bent the neck backward, still begging, and drove home the sword up to the hilt. Next, not far off, he met Haemonides, a sacred minister of Phoebus and Diana of the crossroads, wearing the holy headband, all in white and shining priestly robes, over the field. Aeneas drove him till the men went down, then stood his mighty shadow covering him, and took his life in sacrifice. Serestus bent for his arms and shouldered them to be your trophy. Mars Gravidus, battle king. The Italians rally, led by Sicylus of Vulcan's line, and Umbro from the Maurian mountains, as the Dardan still raged on against them. With his blade he cut away Anxious' left arm with all his round of shield. This man had made some loud threat, thinking words would summon prowess, carried away perhaps, and sure long years would bring him hoary age. Then to confront Aeneas' fiery course, Tarquitus came, elate with flashing arms, a son the nymph Dorope bore to Phanes, god of woodland, spear drawn back and thrust. Aeneas pinned his big shield to his cuirass, putting him out of action. As Tarquis vainly pled, and would have pled again, the Trojan struck his head off to the ground, then with his foot made the warm trunk roll over, speaking above him from his pitiless heart, Lie there now, fearsome as you are. No gentle mother would ever hide you in the earth, or weight your body with a family tomb. Either you stay here for the carrion birds, or the sea takes you under. Hungry fishes nibble your wounds. Aeneas then ran onward, after Itaeus and Lucus, front-rank men of Turnus, Numa the brave, and tawny Camers, son of great-hearted Volscens, Wealthius, landowner in Ausanias once, who ruled the silent town, Amyclade. As men say, the Titan Aegean had 100 arms, 100 hands, and sent out burning breath from 50 mouths and breast, where he opposed Jove's thunderbolt, clanging his 50 shields. and drawing 50 swords, just so Aeneas multiplied savagery over the whole field, once his sword pointed warm. Now see him rushing, Niphus's 4-horse team, their breast against him, when they catch sight of him and his long strides and murderous moaning, they wheeled round in fear, carrying backward, spilling out their driver, whirling the chariot along the shore. At the same time, Lucas and his brother Liger drove their white team into action, Liger at their reins, while grim Lucas made play with his sword, far from inclined to wait their fiery onset. Aeneas rushed them, looming with his speared aim. Liger called, "This is not Dominus' team you see, and not Achilles' war car, not the field of Phrygia. Here and now on Latin ground, you'll have an end of war, an end of life." So in his madness he proclaimed. The Trojan warrior called out nothing in reply, but sent his javelin spinning, hanging on and bending to the stroke, using his blade to goad the team. Left foot ahead, Leucicus settled himself to fight just as the spear broke through his gleaming shield's rim at the bottom, penetrating his left groin. Pitched from the car, he rolled out dying on the field. Aeneas, that grave captain, mocked him bitterly. "No panic of your team lost, you your footing, no mere shadows of enemy ahead. Make them shy backward. No, you tumbled out and left them of your own accord." With this, he took hold of the horse's head. Lucas, luckless brother, slid from the chariot and held his hands out helplessly. He said, "I beg you in your own name, in the name of those who gave you life, great as you are, soldier of Troy, let this life be in mercy. Hear my prayer." He prayed on, but Aeneas said, "Your speech was not like this just now. Die and be brotherly. Stray with your brother." He slashed open the breast where life is hid, and death like these all over the battlefield. The darting captain brought about in fury, wild as a torrent or a dark tornado. Finally, Ascanius and the troops, besieged in vain, broke out and left the camp. At this point, Jupiter slyly said to Juno, "Sister and wife, too, most delightful wife, as you were thinking, not amiss, that thought, it must be Venus who sustains the Trojans, not their good right arms in wars, their keen combativeness and fortitude in danger." In low tones Juno answered, "Darling husband, why provoke me, heart-sick as I am, and fearing as I do your grim decrees? If my love mattered to you as it did and should, you would not, O omnipotent, deny me this, the power to spirit Turnus out of the battle and to keep him safe for his father Darnus. Well then, let him perish. Give Trojan quittance with his gentle blood. And yet he took his name from our own stock. He, sire Pelamus, 4 generations gone, and generously has he often heaped your shrine with offerings. The king of high Olympus briefly answered, "If a reprieve is asked from imminent death, more time for the young man before he falls. If you do understand me, take Turnus off in flight, wrest him away from fate that stands before him. There is room for that much lenience. If some greater favor lies hid in your mind beneath your prayer, if you imagine the whole war affected, changed by this, you cherish a vain hope. Then Juno said in tears, "Oh, if at heart, you meant to grant what you begrudged in words, and life were still ahead, ashore for Turnus. Now heavy dooms ahead for him, the innocent. Else I'm adrift from truth. Oh, let me be. Deluded, let my fear be baseless. Change your purpose for the better as you can." With this, from heaven straightway, she launched herself in a tucked-up robe of cloud, driving a storm before her through the air. She made her way to the Ilian lines and the Laurentine camp, then made a bodiless shade of spectral mist, in likeness of Aeneas, weird and strange. Adorned the image with Dardanian arms, and matched the godlike hero's shield and plume. Gave unreal words, a voice without a mind, a way of walking, modeled after his. This form was like the ghosts that after death are said to hover and haunt, or shapes of dreams deluding sight and touch and sleep. Now, then, before the front line sprang the happy phantom, angering Turnus with her threat of arms and shouted challenges. Turnus attacked at the extreme range, hurling a whizzing spear. The phantom wheeled, turning its back, and ran. At this, thinking in truth in his enemy had given ground, Turnus in his confusion drank deep of an empty hope. He called, "Where bound, Aeneas? Come, don't leave behind your wedding vows. That earth you sail to find, you'll get from my sword arm." And shouting this, he pressed on after, making his drawn sword flash, not seeing that his jubilation now was at the mercy of the wind. One ship, it happened, stood there moored to a high rock ledge, ladders and gangway out. King Aeneas had sailed in it from Clusium. The distraught phantom of Aeneas in flight ran here, to fling itself aboard and under cover. Hard on its heels, past every obstacle, Turnus bounded over the steep gangway. He had scarce reached the prow when Juno broke the morning line and wrenched the ship away, adrift on the ebb of surf. Ashore, Aeneas called for the absent man to stand and fight, while he sent down to earth many a soldier met on the field. But now the weightless phantom looked for a lyre no longer. Soaring up, it mingled with a black cloud as high wind bore Turnus out to sea, and he gazed back, bewildered at this business, giving no thanks for safety. Then he spread his hands to heaven and cried out, "Father Almighty, have you found me, so to be deplored and so chastised? Where am I? Am I sea-born? And from where? And why this flight, or what am I to be so taken? Shall I see my encampment or Laurentin's walls again? What of that company of men who rode with me, followed my flag? Monstrous that I have left them all to face a death unspeakable. Now must I see them leaderless and hear the wounded groaning. What shall I do? What chasm on earth is deep enough to hide me? Better, winds, be merciful. Drive this ship on a rocky coast. A reef will all my heart, I beg you. Put her ground in savage sandbanks where no Rutilians or news of my disgrace can come." He prayed, and in his spirit swayed this way and that, whether for madness as so great a shame, to fit his breast upon his blade and drive it, bloody through his ribs, or else to plunge amid the waves and swim for shore, that curving shore where he could meet again the Teucrians in arms. 3 times he moved to try each way. 3 times, O mighty Juno, held him back, pitting him in his heart, and curbed the young man's passion. Smoothly onward, cutting a wake in the deep sea, he sailed. With favoring swell and current, carried home to the ancient city of his father, Daunus. Meanwhile, hot-hearted Messitenus joined the fight, being by Jove alerted, and he drove against the cheering Trojans, but the Etruscan lines converged on him with all their hatred, on him alone with all. Their javelins cast in a continual shower, he weathered it the way a rocky headland, jutting into the waste sea, bare to gales, bare to the sea surge, taking all the blows, and fury of sky and sea remains unshaken, buffeting back. So he brought Hebros down, Dalichon's son, then Laticus, with Palmus on the run, one smash in mouth and face by a huge stone, a bit of mountain crag, the other hamstrung, left to his slow writhing, even while Messitenus landed Lassus, shoulder armor, and a plume to wear upon his crest. He killed Evanes then, the Phrygians, and the Mimas, peer and friend of Paris. Theano bore him to Amycus on the same night that Cisseus' royal daughter, Hecuba, pregnant with a firebrand, bore Paris. Paris lies in Priam's town. The Italian beach holds Mimas the forgotten. Think of a wild boar, one Mount Vesuvius, kept safe in his pine forest many years, before the nipping hounds harried him out, or one the Laurentine marsh for long as fed, on reedy underground, now ringed by hunters, ready with nets. He stands at bay and snorts, ferocious with his bristling hump, and no one's blood is up enough to go in closer. They keep safety away as they attack, with darts and shouts, while he turns on them all, undaunted, waiting for the time to charge, gnashing his tusk and shrugging off the darts. So men who justly hated Messitenus had not the gall to meet him, blade to blade, but harried him with darts and wild sharts at a safe distance. There was a man named Acron, come from Corythus, old country, a Greek, exiled, who left his marriage unfulfilled. As he drove Rutilians into disarray, in crimson plumes, in rose red of his bride, Messitenus caught sight of him apart. An unfed lion prowling in the bush, and ravenous, catches sight of a wild goat, or a tall antlered stag. Then he exults, and gaping terribly ruffles up his mane, before he kills and cleaves to a feast of flesh, while blood bathes and befiles his cruel jaws. With such a spring, Messitenus fell upon the death's rank enemy. Unlucky Acron crumpled first and kicked the black earth, dying, splashing with blood, the spear shaft broken off. But when Orotus turned to run, the killer scorned to hit him from behind, to cast, unseen, and wound him. No, he caught and turned him, facing him man to man, proving the better by force of arms, not by an unfair shot. With foot pressed on the dying where he laid, he pulled his spear out, calling, "Here's no mean partaker in this battle, men. Here lies Ordos, once so high." The Italian troops shouted together, echoing in ovation. Then, however, as he expired, Orotus whispered, "Whoever you are, you'll not take joy in this death long, for it will be avenged. An equal destiny awaits you here. The same field will be yours to lie in soon." Messitenus answered smiling in hard anger, die now, but as for my fate, let the Father of gods and King of men attend to it. He pulled the spearhead from Herodotus' body. Harsh repose oppressed his eyes. A sleep of iron and an eternal night they close. Now Caius cut Alcithous down. Socrata killed Hadabessus. Rapo killed Parentheus and Ors, men of brawn. Messapus finished Clonius and Erexitus. Laoconson, one fallen from his unbridled mount and lying prone, the other on foot. On foot the Lycian Agis too came forward, only to be hurled in the dust by one who had his grandfather's bravery, Valorous. Next Thronius fell to Salius. Salius fell before Necklace, dead shot with a javelin, and the sly arrow striking at long range. In the battle now, Mars evenly dealt out to both sides heavy grief and mutual death. Both killing, both going down in equal number, winners and losers, neither any longer knowing the meaning of retreat. The gods in Jove's long hull pity the enemy rage of these two armies, and the painful toil mankind must bear. For here Venus looked on, there her opponent Juno, while death-pale Tisiphone in savagery roamed the field amid the soldiers in their thousands. Yes, and Maecenas shook a giant spear, and he stormed over the field, tall as Orion, when he wades through expanses of the sea, with shoulders submerged it, or when he brings an aged ash tree staff from the mountain heights, and treads the earth, hidden in the clouds. So giant Maecenas came on in his enormous armor. Sighting him in the long battle line, Aeneas made his way toward him. Maecenas stood fast, utterly fearless, biting his gallant foe, immobile, massive, measuring with his eye the distance needed for his throw. He said, "My right arm only God I have, and shaft I now let fly. Be on my side, I pledge. You, Lausus, armed in what I stripped from him. From this free booter's booty, you shall be my trophy of Aeneas." After his speech, he made a long cast, and the whistling spear winged on, clanged on the shield, but sprang away to fix itself between the flank and groin of Antares, a distinguished soldier there, Hercules' old companion, sent from Argos. He stayed close to Evander and made his home in Italian town, killed by a stroke that missed another. Now he laid and skyward turned his eyes in death, remembering the sweet lad Argos. Then the god-fearing captain Aeneas made his throw through the round shield, convex with triple bronze, layers of linen, worked with triple bull's hide. The spear passed and stuck low in the groin. Yet at the end it lost force. Cheered at seeing Etruscan blood, Aeneas in a flash drew sword from hip and closed with his shocked enemy. Now Lassos groaned at the sight for love of his deaf dear father, and down his cheeks the tears rolled. Here indeed I shall not fail to tell of that hard death you came upon, and of your heroism, if ancientness for a great act wins belief, and of your memorable self, young soldier. Maecenas had begun to back away, disabled, hampered, dragging on his shield the enemy's spear, when in a lightning move the young man threw himself into the fight. Just as Aeneas rose for a downward cut, he beat aside the blade, and for a space put the man off. Italian troops came up with shouts, while under cover of Lass's shield the father limped away. The soldiers' javelins harassed Aeneas and kept him back, so he took shelter behind his shield in a black rage. as when the storm clouds pour down hail in showers. Every farmer and plowman leaves his field, and every traveler takes cover, snugged in some good shelter, overhanging bank or rock bolt. While the rain falls, they defer the day's work till the sun comes out again, so swamped by missiles left and right. Aeneas suffered the war cloud till its thunder passed, and meanwhile had harsh words and threat for Lausus. Why this rush deathward, daring beyond your power? Filial piety makes you lose your head. But Lausus all the same leapt to the clash, beside himself. Now in the Dardan captain, anger boiled up higher. The parquet wound the thread of Lausus to the end. Aeneas drove his tough sword through the young man's body, up to the hilt, for it pierced the half-shield, light defense for one so menacing, and the shirt his mother had woven him, soft cloth of gold, so blood filled up the fold of it. His life now left his body for the air and went in sorrow to the shades. But seeing the look on the young man's face in death, a face so pale as to be awesome, then Anchises' son groaned in profound pity. He held out his hand as filial piety mirrored here, wrung his own heart and said, "O poor young soldier, how will Aeneas reward your splendid fight? How honor you in keeping with your nature? Keep the arms you love to use. For I return to you your forebears, ash and shades, if this concerns you now. Unlucky boy, one consolation for sad death is this: you die by the sword thrust of great Aeneas." Then giving Lausus' troops a sharp rebuke for hanging back, he lifted from the ground the dead man as he laid, his well-combed hair soaking with blood. By rippling Tiber now, his father slowed the bleeding of his wound with river water, and eased himself, his back against a tree trunk. His bronze helm nearby hung from the boughs, and on in the grass in peace his heavy armor lay. Men of his choosing stood in a circle, he himself in pain, his flowering beard combed forward on his chest, panted and tried to rest, to ease his neck. Repeatedly asked for the news of Lausus, repeatedly sent messengers to recall him, bearing his gloomy father's word, but weeping troops bore Lausus lifeless on his armor. A mighty prince brought down by a mighty wound. Messentius' heart knew well for whom they wept, when still far off. Gouging up dust he soiled his white hair, spread his hands to heaven, and when the body came, he clung to it. Did such pleasure in being alive enthrall me, son, that I allowed you whom I sired to take my place before the enemy's sword? Am I your father, saved by your wounds, by your death do I live? Aye, now at the end exile is misery to me, now the wound of it goes deep. There's more, my son, I stained your name with wickedness, driven out as I was, under a cloud, from throne and scepter of my ancestors. Long since I owned my land, my hated folk, punishment for my sins. I should have given my guilty life up, suffering every death. I still live, not yet have I taken leave of men and daylight, but I will. At this he stood up on his anguished thigh, and though strength ebbing and the deep wound made him slow, undaunted he commanded that they bring his mount, his pride and stay, on which he rode. From all his wars victorious, then he said to the mournful animal, "Robus, we too have had a long life now, if lives are ever long for mortals. Either you win today and bring that armor yonder back, blood-smeared, Aeneas' head, too, and avenge with me what Lausus had to bear, or if no force can clear that way, you'll die as I must die." Brave's heart, I know you will not bend the neck to strangers' orders or to Trojan masters. He eased himself on the warm back of the horse, astride him as before, and took a sheaf of javelins in each hand, his bronze helm shining, horsehair plumed abristle, and off he galloped into the battle lines. In that one heart shame seethed amain, and the madness mixed with grief. 3 times with a great voice he called Aeneas, who knew the voice, and prayed in joy, So be it! So may the Father of gods and high Apollo bring it on, begin the fight. At this he moved on up to meet him with his spear. Mezentius in turn said, Hard enemy, how can you think to terrify me? Now, my son is lost. That was the only way. You can destroy me. Neither do I quail at death, nor act indifference to any god. So drop your talk. I come resolved to die. But first there are these gifts I bring for you. At once he hurled a javelin at his enemy, then sent another, and another still, straight to the mark, as he rode wide round in a great circle. But the golden boss held intact. Leftward the assailant rode 3 times around. Aeneas faced the shots, and 3 times turned a thicket of javelins on the bronze shield. The contest, long drawn out, the toil of plucking steel points from his shield, the disadvantages of fighting on foot, grew wearisome. Racking his brains at last, he burst from his position to hurl a spear, squarely between the temples of the war-horse. The beast reared back and high, pawing the air with its forefeet. Then, on his rider thrown, the horse came down, entangling the man, and with his shoulder out of joint, headlong, he plunged and pinned. Trojans and Latin shouts flared to heaven. Aeneas on the run came up, pulling his sword out of the sheath, stood over him, said, Where is the fierce Mezentius now, and his bloodthirsty soul? The Etruscan with his eyes cast up regained his senses, drinking in the air of heaven, answering, Bitter as gold, my enemy, why pillory me and hold up death before me? Taking my life you do no wrong. I had no expectation coming to battle. Lascus, my son, made no compact with you, but that you shall spare me. One request I'll make, if conquered enemies may ask a favor, let my body be hid in earth. I know on every hand that hatred of my people. Fend off their fury, and allow me room in the same grave, my son. This said, he faced with open eyes the sword edge at his throat, and poured his life out on his armor breast in waves of blood. And I'm going to leave it off there. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment below if you like. Give it a thumbs up, a thumbs down, view, or just keep watching. Subscribe, whatever you like. And I'll see you in the next chapter. Bye.